he's got that. He's got options on the return to get to lob onto the backhand, which he does. And that's changed quite a bit at the top level, hasn't it? When players are lobbing much more than they did like 5 years ago.
It's kind of come in a bit more because the doubles started to become very much based on, there was a lot more formations happening. If you watch kind of the Woodbridges or McEnroe Fleming, even the early days of Leander Paes and Bupati, they're not doing that much I formation and like loads of crossing and not getting like super close to the net. But then that started to change and people started to do more formations and get really close. And actually it was open to then start getting the ball over people more easily. Because everyone smashes great, but if you're standing a foot from the net, it's hard to cover everything, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's maybe swinging back around again.
What would you, because I commented about going down the wings, do you think there's more play down the wings now than there ever was?
I think that
there was when Britain played Australia, because every time they had a match point, the Aussies went down the line.
Yeah. Do you mean on the return call?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I think if you're playing, there's a lot of I formation now.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the more percentage return on I against I is to return line, because even if the player goes back the direction that you return in, it's a bit more difficult to finish the point. If you return
shorter distance usually.
Yeah, if you return cross court and the net player comes up out of I and they are on that side, then usually they're going to be able to finish the ball unless it's a really good return. So quite often against I, players will return line. And also, if you've got a kind of situation, depends on the team you're playing against, but if you're playing maybe singles players who aren't as good at the net, if they're staying back, you might want to blast it down the line and make the guy volley rather than just getting it back and play cross court and letting the singles guy wail away with his strong shots from the baseline. So there's kind of...
It's interesting that it shows you how nothing is ever fixed. It's always there for someone to come up with a variation. And, one of the old statements would have been, doubles is a cross court game. And I don't use that anymore when I'm coaching, because it doesn't actually hold true anymore at the best level.
Yeah.
You have to serve cross court. But apart from that, there's so many more variations being used.
Yeah. And because everything's getting a bit, in singles, obviously it's well documented that conditions have got a bit slower, and in recent times the money in doubles has got a bit better, so more singles players are playing, plus the slow conditions, like it's starting to become more viable for singles players to do well in doubles. Kachanov and Rublev have done quite well together. There's a few other examples of people who stay back quite a lot are doing really well. Mark Lopez, Jack Sock stays back a lot, obviously. It's just, and it is, I think it used to be quite kind of dogmatic doubles. I remember another story about me and Mark Gilmore, like when we used to play together a lot. We were both quite small. And remember we played the Welsh guys in like an inter-regional challenge match or something. And they were both bigger than us, and they were serving volleying, and we got absolutely annihilated. And Terry Mabbutt after the match said, right, you two are, I won't do the voice, you two are, from now on, you serve and volley on every single point, every serve, because that's proper doubles. And like he was right, because at the time everyone did that.
Yep.
And also it forced us to kind of come out of our comfort zone and develop those skills, which helped us a lot. But actually for a long time, partly because I was scared of Mr. Mabbutt, for a long time I just never even questioned that. But you look at it now, like I mean, I want to be at the net personally as much as possible when I play, but I will still say I'm in certain situations. If I was playing on clay and I was serving to someone who had been returning really well cross court and hurting me on my first volley, and I was struggling, then I would happily, like on a second serve, serve forehand body and cross and just stay back and hit my forehand. Like I wouldn't find that to be like shock horror anymore. because I see all the time, you know, people winning and doing well.
Yeah, I think there's other things too, even looking at different levels, Alan. So even taking Scottish level, the number of times Hadaway has said to me, he says, this is getting tougher and tougher because those young guys on the other side of the net are just lassoing forehands at me. And it's not just the speed, it's the amount of spin that's on the ball. And so he said it's becoming much tougher for me on that first or second volley, really to hit a crisp one. So
and then I'm sure he then uses that to segue into a story about how he beats them all the time.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, even at a lower level, if you hit a decent serve and you stay back, most people at a lower level will try and return cross court, and it lands in the middle of the court, and then you just move on to your forehand, and the guy at the net's now just a fair target for.
Yeah, exactly. And like at club level, there should be more people doing more sort of formations and like plays at the start of the point. As long as you can serve to a certain level and kind of roughly hit the ball where you want to with a little bit of speed. If you're serving on the ad side and you like to hit your forehand as your second shot, why wouldn't you like cross or switch, you know, on like 50% or more of your service points? I mean, if you practice with the same partner and you train to do it and you get the timing, then it's a great play. You serve, your partner moves to the middle of the court. If it doesn't come to them, it comes down the line or they lob, and then you've got your forehand to attack with. So I think people think that that's not, they're kind of not allowed to, or they don't really have the confidence to do it.
Not enough competition. I mean, again, you brought me back. I did one with Roddy on indoor hard court. Must have been Winter County Week, and we were having a tough time. And I said, right, every time you serve to the advantage court, I'm crossing. But they'll just hit it down the line. I said, that's fine. You're not serving volley. You're just going across onto your forehand. And now you've got a gap going between the straight player and the guy that's been left at the net.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, just to change it. Right?
Yeah, well, it can negate. It's not just about setting yourself up. It can kind of negate strengths of other.
Yeah.
players. So if you're playing against someone who is a very good receiver's partner and keeps putting pressure on your first volley, then, you know, think about playing eye and making the receiver return down the line. Even if they know it's coming, it's just harder to do a poach when, as a receiver's partner, when the return's line rather than.
Well, again, as I said, Roddy's best volley is a backhand volley going away from him and not across the front of him. And he was having to play this tough volley because the returns were so good. They said, well, we'll just not bother having that. So just serve and stay back, cross over to your forehand side, and we'll take that ammunition away from the guy.
Yeah. I think what you both described, I think, is something I see club players not doing a lot of, which is players working together and figuring things out and adapting their game style to fit their strengths, their weapons, and their opponent's weaknesses.
Yeah.
You know, like and being unpredictable. So, you know, serving and not always serving and volleying, but because the challenge for the receiver, if you're staying back, is very, very different from you closing into the net. What they have, the challenge with the return.